Hello and welcome. Today, let's explore examples of how continuing involvement works when an entity retains some exposure or control over a transferred financial asset. For instance, when an entity guarantees the transferred asset, its continuing involvement is determined by the lower of two values: the carrying amount of the asset or the maximum amount the entity might be required to repay under the guarantee. This ensures that the exposure is clearly defined and limited. Another example is when the entity has a written or purchased option on the transferred asset. In this case, the continuing involvement is tied to the carrying amount of the asset that the entity may repurchase. However, if it's a written put option and the asset is measured at fair value, the involvement is limited to the lower of the fair value of the asset or the option exercise price. A third scenario involves cash-settled options or similar provisions on the transferred asset. In such cases, the continuing involvement is calculated in the same way as for non-cash settled options, relying on the terms of the option and the value of the transferred asset. These examples highlight how continuing involvement is measured and ensure that any remaining exposure or control over the transferred asset is accurately reflected. It's all about maintaining transparency and consistency in how these situations are accounted for. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope this helped clarify the concept of continuing involvement.